Thank you, Marcia, as always. BL Kids, ages 3 through 2nd grade, you are dismissed. If you did not register your child, make sure you go back with them and they will help you and show you how to do that. They should all have a little name tag so we know who they are. Good morning. Man, another day, right? Another week, and spring is still not here. What the heck? What's going on? I talked to my Florida friend yesterday. It's like, it's in the 80s today. I'm like, I hate your face. I moved from there. I don't know why. I do know why. It was to be here today with you. We ended a series last week called Jonah, and when we scheduled the Jonah series and then this new series called The Compassion of Christ, I didn't think ahead in terms of where Jonah 4 ends and where this series begins. If you remember, we heard this word compassion in chapter 4 of Jonah. And what is compassion? Well, if you didn't know this, the week leading up to Christ's crucifixion and resurrection is called the Passion of Christ. It also means the suffering of Christ. And so we're going to talk about that in the coming weeks, certainly. But I thought we need to also talk about this thing called compassion. Because Christ, as you read Scripture, showed it. He experienced it. So let's look at the English dictionary. Now, typically, it's not a good idea to, when reading the Bible, to look at the English dictionary and look up a word. It's not a terrible idea. It's not a great idea. Why? Because sometimes we translate from Greek into English and we try to use the best possible word that we can. And it's not always the best. And so then we go one step even further away from the meaning by going to the English definition. But this one actually isn't too far off. Compassion. A feeling of deep sympathy and sorrow for another who is stricken by misfortune, accompanied, this is the important part, by a strong desire to alleviate the suffering. See, compassion, it demands something of us. It demands a movement, a changing, a decision, an action to take place. In the Greek, and I don't love using the Greek words because, number one, I say them incorrectly, and B, I don't want you thinking that I am trying to sound super smart. I'm not. But the word in Greek should be up here. It's a great, long, fun word to say, splangnitzomai. And this is what it means. You're reading it and you're already laughing, aren't you? To be moved as to one's bowels, hence to be moved with compassion or to have compassion. That sounds awfully strange, doesn't it? In our American and even just our today's culture, what is the seat of the emotion? Anybody? What is the seat? I'm pointing to it. The seat of the emotion is what? The heart, right? Valentine's Day, there are hearts everywhere because we attribute our emotions, our feelings to our heart. Our heart, it flutters, it pitter-patters when that one person is close to us. When we are hurt, our heart is broken. When we're afraid or we're angry, our heart rate elevates. We go and we think of our emotions stemming from our heart. And in the Old Testament and even in the New Testament, they felt it came from, this is a little disgusting, the bowels. It's a little bit deeper, isn't it? Isn't it? And so as people think this is funny, I don't get it, let me explain to you why I totally understand this definition. I love books. I've always loved books. When I was younger, it was science fiction, fantasy, all as I could get it, I would read it. I still love books. If we go as a family to Barnes & Noble, she's already laughing. We walk in, that smell of books. I can make it one, maybe 2 aisles, and I'm going to the bathroom. Yeah, you're laughing. It's true. And we know. Why? Because I'm so excited. Because it moved me. That's a Mark Lowry joke. It's a little bit more than just the heart. And it sounds disgusting maybe, but Mom would be so mad at me when she hears this online that I use the word bowels from the pulpit. But it's scriptural. Back off. This Greek word, splagchnizomai, and I said it totally right, is used 12 times in the New Testament. This is interesting. I didn't know this when I started this series. I had no idea. It's used 12 times in the New Testament. You may actually, as you read the Bible, you may find other words, compassion. But if you do, it isn't this Greek word. It's a different Greek word. 12 times. And every single one of them is used in one of 4 or 5 ways. Number 1, it's either describing Jesus Christ. He felt compassion. Or Christ is using it to describe himself. I have compassion. I feel compassion. It's used by Christ in 2 different parables, and he's referring to the Father, to himself, to God. So God has compassion. Or it's used one time by a man who's asking for it from Jesus. That word, compassion, is centered by Jesus Christ every single time it's used in the New Testament. You think that's by coincidence? What does that mean? Well, it means that Christ is and was compassionate. Let's go back to Jonah 4, if we will, and remind ourselves how even the people in the Old Testament saw God. Verse 1 through 4 in chapter 4. But it greatly displeased Jonah, and he became angry. Quick summary, if you weren't here last week, Jonah is pretty mad, extremely mad, because the place he thought should be destroyed, that God said, I'm going to destroy, wasn't destroyed, and he's mad about it. And he says, he prayed to the Lord, and he said, please, Lord, was not this what I said while I was still in my own country? Therefore, in order to forestall this, I fled to Tarshish, for I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abundant in loving kindness, and one who relents concerning calamity. Jonah, even not liking that it does, recognizes this word describes my God. That word compassion in the Hebrew is rakan. It is used 91 times in the Old Testament, and almost every time it is used by God referring to himself, by man referring to God, or by man asking for it from God, or God saying, you will not receive it from me for this reason. Again, this word compassion centered around God. I think it's probably pretty important we understand what it means and what it looks like and what it does. We're going to read in Matthew chapter 8 about 20 verses. And we're going to get through each one, and we're going to, rather than talk about each section here, we could stop and have a mini sermon on, maybe even a full couple sermons on. But that isn't the point of today. We're going to get through to the end. The last section of Scripture here really is what I want to hone in on. So let's just start reading. And some of you should be really excited because it's the Bible. You're welcome. All of you should be excited, right? Chapter 9, verse 18b, through 38. A synagogue official came and bowed down before him being Christ, and said, my daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her, and she will live. Okay, there's the request. And what does Christ do? He does something. He responds. He got up and began to follow him, and so did his disciples. And on his way, and a woman who had been suffering from a hemorrhage for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak. For she was saying to herself, if I only touch his garment, I will get well. But Jesus, turning and seeing her, said, daughter, take courage. Your faith has made you well. And then a response happens. At once, the woman was made well. Verse 23, when Jesus came into the official's house and saw the flute players and the crowd in noisy disorder, he said, leave, for the girl has not died, but is asleep. And they began laughing at him. And Jesus, in embarrassment, in his prideful obsession and his anger, turned around and left and said, you don't deserve it. You're laughing at me. That's not in there. That's probably how I might have responded. You don't deserve this. You're jerks. No, what did he say? I don't know where we're at. Leave for the girl, verse 25, verse 25. But when the crowd had been sent out, he entered and took her hand. He does something. He took her by the hand, and the girl got up. This news spread throughout all that land. As Jesus went on from there, 2 blind men followed him, crying out, have mercy on us, Son of David. When he entered the house, the blind man came up to him, and Jesus said to them, do you believe that I am able to do this? And they said to him, yes, Lord. Then he does something. He touched their eyes, saying, it shall be done to you according to your faith. And their eyes were opened. And Jesus sternly warned them, see that no one knows about this. But when they went out and spread the news about him throughout all that, land. Verse 32, almost there. Man, God's doing some incredible things. And the question I keep asking myself is why? 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 Verse 32, as they were going out, a mute, demon-possessed man was brought to him. After the demon was cast out, the mute man spoke, and the crowds were amazed and were saying, nothing like this has ever been seen in Israel. But the Pharisees were saying, he cast out the demons by the ruler of the demons. Verse 35, a lot of action takes place. Jesus was going through all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every kind of disease and every kind of sickness. He's doing 2 things. Proclaiming the gospel, the good news. He's teaching the gospel of the kingdom. And he's healing every disease, every kind of disease, and every kind of sickness. And he's doing 2 different things. Verse 36, we ask the question, why? Why is he doing this? Seeing the people, he felt compassion for them because they were distressed and dispirited. Also translated, they were harassed and they were thrown down. He, as God, is also fully man. He's walking around. He's seeing people who are distressed. He's seeing people who are thrown down, and he feels something for them. He feels compassion to the depth of his soul. Because they were like sheep without a shepherd. I got to wonder, as Christ came to earth, we know that he is God, fully in human form, and he began living life for 30 years and began his ministry at the age of 30. I got to wonder, at some point, he knows, I came here to die. I came here so that people who don't know me, who don't know the Father, would come to know him. But he sees all these people who are hurt, these people who he loves. And I just got to wonder if for a moment, one moment he thinks these people are dispirited. They're broken. They have no leader. They have no shepherd. Maybe I ought to just stay. Heresy. I don't think so. But he knows that's not why I came. Christ healing the sick isn't why he came. If that's why he came, there would be no sickness. If he came to cure disease, there would be no disease. That's not why he came. He did it because he felt compassion. And he was moved by it. And an action took place because of it. So as I'm thinking, I just wonder if he's wondering, should I just stay? Knowing he's not going to, knowing that isn't part of the plan, but knowing they need somebody, he then looks to his disciples. You think that's coincidental? This is in here? 37. Then he said to the disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. In context, they need me. These people need me to stay. They in some form, they need a leader. But I'm not going to do it. I'll lead them from heaven. He looks at his disciples and he says essentially, but you're going to lead. Pray, therefore beseech the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest. Christ is saying, I'm coming to fix the heavenly problems here on earth. That people don't know me as they should. People can't be with the Father in heaven as they should because of sin, because of mistakes, because of their brokenness. That's why I came, was to fix that, to repair that brokenness. But I love these people. And they need compassion. And I'm feeling this compassion. And so I want to help when I feel it. But I also want my disciples to help when they feel it, and they're going to help take care of the earthly problems. You see, we're the church, and part of our task is, yes, our first priority is that people would come to know who Christ is, that we would proclaim the good news of the kingdom, but also to help take care of each other. You see, Christ could have easily have said, listen, I have to get from point A to point B, and all the in-between is a distraction. Like, why do you think that Christ told the blind man when they were healed, don't tell anybody? Like, why? Because telling things made it hard for Christ to get from point A to point B, because the crowds wanted to be healed too. They wanted to gather around him, and it became a distraction. So he could have just said, if I heal them, it's going to be harder for me later to get through the crowd. So I'll just walk right by them and ignore them. But he felt compassion. And it led him to do something with it. And he says to them, don't tell anybody. But of course they did. How could they not? The blind can see. The question that I have for us as a body, as you as an individual, what moves you to compassion? What, as you're going through your life, going through your day-to-day, as you see the news or see Facebook posts, usually it's frustration, not compassion. What moves you to compassion? And then what do you do with it? You see, if you're like me, as I've admitted multiple times, I just shove it back down deep. Because it's inconvenient. It's dangerous. It makes me very vulnerable. You see, as a man, I was taught by society that I'm not supposed to have emotions other than anger. That's allowed. And so I learned through wrestling and through sports that you just don't talk about how you feel. You don't feel anything because it gets in the way. It's a sign of weakness. Well, if it's a weakness, and Christ was really weak. See, I was taught wrong. I learned wrong. I remember distinctively, I was right in college, and I was working at camp in Florida, and I got a phone call. A friend of mine had killed himself. A friend that I hadn't seen in a while, and he was younger than I was. Tormented soul. Broken. I didn't feel anything. That's pretty normal. You feel you're numb. You're a little bit in shock. I didn't feel anything. And I went out into the yard there outside the building that we were staying in. And I began walking around a tree. I began praying this prayer, a very non-masculine prayer. God, help me feel this. God, I want to feel this. I owe it to Robbie to feel this. He matters. He matters to you, and he ought to matter to me, and I should feel something about this. And service started a couple hours later, and we go into the church, and a song started playing. I have no idea what the song was, and I began singing, and I hit the floor. I sat down, and I began to weep. And I'm an ugly crier. That's why I don't do it very much. And I began to wail. I left the building unable to contain it. And I just wonder, if you like to write things down, this is my one quote for the day. I don't give many good quotes. This is tweetable. Hashtag. Perhaps we are never as like Christ as when we are compassionate. Perhaps we're never as like Christ when we feel and are moved to compassion. Christ and God, the same person, all through the Bible, is described as a compassionate and gracious God. But I've learned somewhere along the way that I'm not supposed to have feelings. It's a lie. Absolute lie. And we have missed opportunities to be like Christ when we've said to ourselves, I don't want to feel that. That's inconvenient. That's dangerous. The other question is, and it's really alongside it, is do you feel compassion? Do you feel compassion? Here's the thing about feeling it. It hurts sometimes. Because there's sometimes when we have compassion, I don't know what to do with it. I just feel it. We need to be in prayer for wisdom. God, help me to feel it. Help me to know what to do with it. Because I can keep feeding the guy on the side of the street Wendy's every day. But why did Christ come? He said, I came. He was proclaiming and teaching the good news of the kingdom while also healing every kind of sickness and disease. The healing was an avenue to get people to hear the truth of the kingdom. Our compassion, it moves us to do something with the intention of opening a door to help people know who Christ is. You show them Christ by being like Christ. And perhaps we are never more like Christ than when we are compassionate. I want to ask the team to come up for a closing song. And as I'm preparing this sermon, I'm a guy, I don't want to talk about this kind of emotional stuff, right? Yes, I do. Because I am nowhere near like Christ as I want to be. Nowhere near. But by golly, this is one way I can get closer to being like Christ. I want to do it. So I want to challenge you. Yes, you. I want to challenge you to, will you begin praying, God, help me to feel compassion?
Help me to know, to see brokenness and be moved by it. So often we, like when those commercials come on television with the dog, it's all the dogs in the pound. I turn it off. I don't want to feel that. Or that lady asking for help for these orphans, these kids. I turn it off. Why? I don't want to feel that. No, I need to feel that. And then have wisdom from God to know, now what do I do with it? Will you begin praying? Maybe you're like me and you just need to feel it. Lord, help me to feel it. Maybe you're one step further. Lord, help me know what to do with it. Because I have bought a lot of people meals, but they still don't know who Christ is. How do I move that next step forward into helping them understand who Christ is? Because that's the purpose, that's the point. I don't know about you, but I want to be like Christ. So as the song plays, I want you to just, we sing because for me, it's one of the only ways I know how to express myself. I'm a terrible singer, but I don't really care. Because the words, they mean something. So as we sing this song, I want to just challenge you to come and begin praying. God, what do I do with this? Or God, help me to feel. I don't want to be numb anymore. As the song plays, these altars are, as always, are open. Come and pray. If you want to be left alone and just pray by yourself, you come to the side and no one will bother you. No one will interrupt you. If you want someone to pray with you, come to this side over here and just someone will come. I'll come or someone will come and pray with you. But don't leave here today ignoring the calling of the Spirit. So if we're called to be a people who make more and better disciples, we better be feeling something about that. It should matter because Robbie mattered. The guy next door matters. The person down the street matters. And we don't feel for them and aren't moved by that, they may never hear the good news of the kingdom.